Yes, hello. This is your host, Harry Wilkinson, and welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. This is the show where we discuss the day's and week's events, and we take a look at them from a spiritual perspective, from a higher perspective. Some people are still very much afraid of this word spiritual or don't understand it. They conflate it, mix it up with religion, which is understandable because religion claims to deal in the spiritual. Quite frankly, as we have seen in today's modern culture, many religions or many aspects of religion are anything but spiritual, and in fact, spirituality is often the last concern of major religions. In fact, religion and spirituality at times seem to be working in cross purposes with each other. So, what do I mean when I say spiritual? What does spirituality mean? Well, here's my take on it. Spirituality is an aspect of human existence. It is part of every human being. It's a part of our nature. Whether we understand that nature, whether we embrace that nature or not, there is a part of every human being that is spiritual. Spirituality is, I believe, a part of human existence in the way that your intellect is, your emotions are, your sensory perception, senses of smell and taste, and all of those things. I believe that spirituality is as integral a part of being a human being as all of those other things. Your memory, your feelings, emotions, your philosophy on life, all of those things. And so everyone has a spiritual nature of some sort. Now, what tends to happen is that in one way or another we're taught not to trust it, or we're taught to fear it, or we just don't understand it. So it goes one way or another. It may go to a major religion. In other words, we don't really get what it means to be spiritual. We don't understand our own spiritual nature. So we turn to a major religion or major religious organization, or a dazzling cult-like figure to deal with it for us, to explain it for us, to show us how to use it, basically, so that we don't have to take responsibility for it. We can just turn it over to the experts, so to speak, whether those experts are Christians or Jews or Muslims or Hindus, those who have centuries of written tomes about these things, centuries of practice and dogma. Those things are comforting because spirituality can be scary. Spirituality is unknown. It takes you out of complacency. It takes you out of your known and throws you into something that is not quite so easily definable. So it's an understandable impulse that people would turn to a organization or a person or even a book that claims to make sense of it all in easily understandable ways. So that's one aspect of what people do with their spirituality. Others see religion and spirituality as the same thing, and seeing that religion doesn't really seem to equate with material reality around us. In other words, what science tells us of the world is incredibly different than what many religions show us of the world. Many people then just discount religion as a set of, basically mythical or made-up things. And by so dismissing, they also dismiss their own spirituality. For many people, it's really important for them to believe that this is all there is. That we are human bodies, that there's nothing more than that going on. And that when we die, that's it, it's done, and you don't even have to think about it. It's the same impulse that makes people, turn to religion to explain things easily. I mean, what can be easier than just saying no? It doesn't exist. That this is all there is. That really simplifies things. You don't have to think about it anymore. So those are the kinds of things that we do with our innate spirituality. But spirituality never goes away from us. As I say, we can choose to embrace it. We can choose not to embrace it. We can choose to parcel it out. We can choose to explain it away using various religious or cultural symbols. But it never goes away. In dreams, we experience our spirituality every night. In moments of amazing awe and beauty and emotion, these are spiritual moments. The moments that tell us that we are connected, we are one. There is more than the body that we have created. And it doesn't come with, an instruction book or a manual. It can be very fleeting, in fact, so fleeting that you may doubt it actually happened or it's actually real. And you may dismiss it immediately as you experience it. But we all have experiences of that type. We all have a spiritual nature. It's part of us. It's part of being human. It's part of who and what we are, and ultimately why we're here. Now that's my take on it. Of course, everybody else has their own take on it, which is as it should be. None of these things are easily explained, nor should they be. And as I was mentioning before, when you start looking for easily explainable things, that's very attractive, but it also takes you out of the mystery. It takes you out of really what the truth of what, who and what we are is that it's not definable. It's not easily quantifiable. You can't explain it away. We love science because it makes us feel like we're in control to a certain degree. It makes us feel like we understand these things. It gives us very comfortable things to hold on to when things don't seem quite so comfortable. And science is wonderful at explaining a lot of these things that we create and how they work. But if you dig a little deeper to try to get to the why, that can be very disconcerting. One of the things I've always said is that, if you talk about any scientific concept and you go at it like a 2-year-old and just keep asking why, eventually you get to the dreaded answer, the dreaded sentence that so many of us can't deal with. Those words, I don't know. You can do that with any scientific concept. If you ask a scientist or a meteorologist, why does it rain? He'll tell you about cumulus clouds. He'll tell you about high-pressure, low-pressure systems. He'll show you maps. He'll show you graphs. If you keep asking him why, eventually he's going to tell you, I don't know. Why are there cumulus clouds? Well, you have this high pressure here, you have this, that. Why do you have those? Because eventually you get down to the point where I don't know. That's the place where spirituality lives. That's the mystery where we all live. The I don't know. And that's what most people are very uncomfortable about. So rather than live in the I don't know, they want to go to an organized religion, or they want to go to science, or they want to go to, the structure of atheism to tell them there's nothing even to think about. Anything than to deal with the unknown. Anything than to deal with the I don't know. And so that's the impulse. We have this amazing energy. I liken it now. I mentioned earlier. Our sense of spirituality being like our sense of our intellect, or one of our senses of smell. But as I think about it, it's more raw than that. I think our spirituality is very much like, I think it's the most like our sexuality. It's something that is so powerful and so potentially scary and so sometimes crazy and undefinable that you're a little afraid of it. You don't know quite what to do with it. And your impulse is to tamp it down or tame it or channel it somewhere, put it someplace. That's what I think. I think our spirituality is closest in nature to our sexuality. Our sexuality is very complicated, very messy. It's never as clean and cut out as people would like it to be or would make it out to be. And many people just ignore that part of their lives, or they're able to, block it so that it isn't something that they ever really explore or think about. I think the same can be said with spirituality. But then there are those of us who can't ignore those things. There are those of us who can't ignore the mysteries of our lives. And for those of us, it's a lifelong journey to explore. So there is my take on spirituality. Now, I must apologize. This is a weekly show, and I have been off the air for 2 weeks, and I've been off the air for 2 weeks because of technical difficulties that I did not expect. I like to do the show live, just because I like the live feel, so that when I'm doing it and when I'm talking about it, you're hearing it at the same time, unless you're listening to the podcast later on. However, the apparatus for me broadcasting live, particularly my speakers, just were not working, and I've yet to get to the bottom of that. So I'm not able to do the show as live as I would like to. I'm recording it live here in my own studio, and do a little bit of tweaking before I upload it and broadcast it. But I'm still doing it as live as possible, so to speak, just because I like the energy that brings to what I'm talking about. So I beg your forgiveness for abandoning you for the past 2 weeks. I know it's been an amazing 2 weeks. The worst time possible for me to have technical difficulties, because this is the kind of, particularly last week, the kind of week that really this show is intended to talk about. As I'm sure you're well aware, we had 3 very powerful, very strange experiences hit us on a national level almost exactly at the same time. And there's a 4th one, too, that was in the mix that sadly didn't got a little bit eclipsed thanks to some of the other things that were going on. But first, of course, is the bombing that took place at the Boston Marathon 2 Mondays ago. Horrible, horrible thing that happened. And for a time, when nobody knew who had done this, there was this amazing speculation about who had done this. People were thinking about terrorism. And when they thought about terrorism, they thought about the Arab culture, Muslims, brown people, in fact. In fact, there were spurious reports from so-called reporters that brown people had been arrested or caught doing this crime. An Arabic Muslim man who was at the bombing and was terrified when the bombs went off and began to run, was seen by people in the crowd, chased down, tackled, and arrested. Why? Because he was brown, and he ran, like anybody would when you hear a bomb go off. This is the craziness that went on, and this is what I think is part of the meaningful impact of why we create situations like these. And I'll get to what I mean by that. I think that if you've listened to the show before, you understand what I mean by that, but I will clarify in a moment. But I want to talk about the other two things that were going on that same week. Now, a fertilizer factory in Texas blew up, taking with it a nursing home and a school, and injuring and killing a lot more people than the Boston bomber had. And this factory in Texas was close to the town of Waco, which I'm sure all of you remember the history of Waco and the terrible things that happened there, and the government standoff, and the subsequent killing of David Koresh, all of that. So that was titillatingly put out to us via the news media, making us wonder, had there been another attack? And since this was so close to not only Waco, but the anniversary of the actions that took place in Waco, someone must be trying to do something. Somebody must be trying to make a statement. Because not only was it close in proximity, it was also the anniversary of the horrible things that took place in Waco. So there was that hanging out there. And then, to top it off, came the ricin guy. The ricin guy. President Obama and several senators had received letters that appeared to be laced with a substance known as ricin, which, if ingested or inhaled, can kill you. It's quite dangerous. And so these letters were found. The traces of ricin were found, and they traced them to, or they assumed that this gentleman who lived in Mississippi had sent these pieces of mail out. Now, why he was assumed to be guilty of this crime, I'm not exactly sure, other than the fact that he apparently had been writing to senators before, and he had a sort of a record, and they'd had their eye on him. But as they investigated more, they found out that this man didn't have access to ricin, didn't have any ricin or any of the tools needed to make it around. So they let him go. They had to let him go. They had no proof that he'd done anything. And to top it off, while they had him in custody, another letter laced with ricin showed up. And so they really had nothing on him. However, there's another fella involved in this. Apparently they have some sort of feud going. And the thought is now that he was sort of set up for this kind of thing. But before they found these guys in Mississippi, you had the ricin incident there, and for a moment, a lot of people thought that these three disparate events were connected, that they were all linked together as some sort of conspiracy, making people think, well, the terrorists have a three-pronged attack or something of that nature, thinking there was some sort of conspiracy going on, whether it was a homegrown kind of conspiracy or a Al-Qaeda style conspiracy against the West. People weren't sure, but there was a lot of speculation that somehow these three events were connected. And that was the thought for a while, until it was shown very clearly that they were separate events involving separate people. However, what I would like to suggest is that indeed there was and is a conspiracy going on, and that these three events are connected, but not in the way that people would think. Not in any sort of, not on the level of material organization, not on the level of conscious thought. And here's where I go back to what I always say when these sorts of tragedies occur. That we, at the level of our spiritual power, if you want, at the metaphysical level of our ability to create the world around us, which is what we do, we create these situations. And whenever you have events coalescing like this, you know that there is a, for lack of a better word, a divine mind behind it. There is something we're creating here to tell us something. And I believe that those events are connected in that way. In that we, for whatever reasons on that level of metaphysics, created this interweb of confusion, conspiracy, paranoia, and fear to tell us something very important. And not only that, to help us experience something we needed to experience. So what was that, you might ask? Well, as I say, whenever these experiences happen, like the shooting in Newtown or the shooting in Aurora, and by the way, we'll get to the gun situation in a moment. But whenever we have these occurrences, it is our way of reaffirming our connection to one another. These are the moments when we understand our oneness in a way that our everyday lives often don't give us a chance to do. And when we have these tragedies, where people's physical bodies are injured or taken away, it gives us pause. It gives us a moment to connect. It gives us time to connect. It gives us an understanding of our oneness. We send prayers. We think about those people. We connect with them. And many people just only connect with them via, the news media or what have you. But these stories are told, and we relate to these stories, and we understand them on a personal level, but we also understand them on a spiritual level. And so we create these situations to help us experience that. I think also we created these situations to, if you will, remind us that our perceptions, our biases, if you will, can muddle things so dramatically that we see things that aren't actually the truth. In other words, there were assumptions made from varying factions that these bombers who set off the bombs at the Boston Marathon were either Arabs. They were radicalized Muslims from the Middle East, or they were sort of rednecky kind of homegrown terrorists with a grudge against the government and a grudge against the black president, and striking out in that way. And that same sort of thought pattern was applied to the situation in Texas. Again, it was thought that this was some sort of homegrown plot from someone who had a grudge and was angry about the things that had happened at Waco and had a grudge against the government. And then you had the ricin scare, again, from somebody who seemingly had it out against the government. So it's very interesting how all of these intertwined, and all of them ended up being exactly nothing that anybody had projected. The two bombers in the Boston case couldn't have been further from an Arab if they tried. They could not possibly be further from the traditional Al-Qaeda style terrorists. They were Muslims. They apparently were radicalized. So that meme still holds, but it's brought a whole new aspect to how we perceive radicalized Muslims, because they're not just Arabs anymore. The fertilizer explosion turned out to be an accident caused by lack of regulation and control of the fertilizer factory that had 10 times the amount of a very explosive element than it should have had in its possession. And then finally the ricin, we still haven't gotten to the mystery of that yet, but the guy they thought did it didn't do it. So what this speaks to is our fear of government, or the lack thereof. And it's very interesting that in this time, these three stories came together to show us that. It's very interesting indeed. And the fact that we as a culture, are battling these demons is very, very telling. And next week we'll go a little further in getting to the bottom of what all of this was about. But until then, I wish you a very happy and healthy week, and look forward to seeing you again.